The distress signal. The mining colony on Kepler 442b had been peaceful for 3 generations. Miners from various species worked together, extracting rare crystals that powered faster-than-light communication across the galaxy. The Vorthan families had built homes into the cliffsides. The aquatic Mallory had created underwater settlements in the planet's vast oceans. Even the gaseous Clouders had established floating cities in the upper atmosphere. They lived in harmony, trading resources and sharing knowledge, until the day the Krathon Empire arrived. Zara Velnash watched through the observatory window as black ships blotted out the stars. The young Vorthan engineer had never seen warships before, only heard stories from traders who passed through. Her crystalline skin reflected the red emergency lights that suddenly bathed the colony in their ominous glow. The ships were massive, each one shaped like a predatory blade, designed to intimidate before they even fired a shot. The transmission came through every speaker, every communicator, every device capable of receiving signals. The voice was cold, mechanical, translated through universal processors but losing none of its menace. Inhabitants of mining designation 779, you are now subjects of the Krathon Empire. Cease all operations. Prepare for processing. Resistance will result in immediate termination of your colony. Zara ran through the corridors toward the communication center, her 4 legs clicking against the metal floors. Other colonists huddled in doorways, their various forms of eyes wide with fear. The Krathon Empire had been expanding for 200 years, swallowing independent worlds and forcing them into servitude. No one had successfully resisted them. Their technology was too advanced, their cruelty too absolute. The communication center was chaos when she arrived. Director Hask, an elderly Mallory whose blue scales had dulled with age, floated in his water sphere, rapidly sending distress signals to anyone who might help. But Zara knew the truth. The nearest Confederation outpost was 6 months away at fastest travel. The Krathon would have stripped the planet bare by then. There must be something we can do, shouted Tarek, a young miner whose rocky Gorvak skin scraped against the doorframe. We can't just surrender. You've heard what they do to mining colonies. They work people until they die, then process the bodies for nutrients. Zara moved to an old console in the corner, one that hadn't been used in decades. Her thin fingers danced across the controls, bringing up ancient communication protocols that predated modern galactic standards. She had found these systems months ago while repairing old equipment, discovered references to channels that were marked as forbidden, quarantined, dangerous. At the time, she had been curious but cautious. Now desperation overruled caution. What are you doing? Director Hask asked, his translator gurgling through the water. There are old channels here, Zara explained, not looking up from her work. Communication frequencies that were sealed off centuries ago. They lead to a quarantine zone in the Orion Arm. The warnings say never to use them, but they also say someone might be listening. Quarantine zones exist for a reason, Hask warned. Whatever is there was deemed too dangerous for contact. More dangerous than the Krathon? Zara asked. Above them, the first shuttles began descending from the warships. They had maybe an hour before ground forces arrived. She activated the old systems. They hummed with a different energy than modern equipment, almost organic in their responsiveness. The channels were strange, operating on frequencies that shouldn't exist according to current physics. But they worked. The signal went out carrying a simple message translated into hundreds of languages, including some that the computer didn't recognize but had stored anyway. This is Mining Colony 779. We are under attack by hostile forces. Families are here. Children are here. If anyone receives this message, please help. We have no weapons. We have no defense. The Krathon Empire is taking our world. Please, anyone, help us. The message repeated, broadcasting into the void toward coordinates that every stellar map marked with warnings. Stay away, do not approach. Extreme danger. Quarantine maintained for galactic safety. For long minutes, nothing happened. The Krathon shuttles grew larger in the sky. Then, impossibly, there was a response. The voice that came through the speakers was different from any universal translator output Zara had heard. It was speaking a language the computer couldn't fully parse, but somehow she understood it anyway. The words formed meaning directly in her mind. Mining Colony 779. This is reconnaissance vessel Endeavor from Earth. We received your distress signal. Can you confirm the number of civilians and the size of the attacking force? Earth. Zara had heard that word before, buried in ancient databases, a species that had fought something from outside normal space and won, but at such a cost that they had isolated themselves. Humans, they were called. Death Worlders. Stories said their planet was so hostile that most galactic species couldn't survive there for more than a day. High-gravity, toxic atmosphere, predators everywhere, even the plants were dangerous. "This is Zara Velnash," she responded, her voice shaking. "We have 3,000 civilians. Families from 12 different species. The Krathon brought 30 warships and ground forces. Please, they're already landing. They'll start processing people soon." There was a pause. When the human voice returned, it was harder, carrying an edge that made everyone in the communication center stand still. "Understood. We're 20 minutes out. Tell your people to take shelter underground if possible. Mark any medical facilities with bright lights. And Zara, when you see us coming, don't be afraid. We're here to help." 20 minutes. The shuttle would be on the ground in 10. Zara looked at Director Hask. "How can they get here in 20 minutes from a quarantine zone?" "That's impossible." But she organized the evacuation anyway. Colonists rushed to the underground mining tunnels carrying their young, helping those who moved slower. The medical centers turned on every light they had, making them visible from orbit. And they waited. The Krathon ground forces marched through the colony's main street exactly as expected. They were tall insectoid creatures with multiple arms and chitinous armor that served as both protection and exoskeleton. Their weapons were energy-based, capable of reducing organic matter to ash in seconds. They moved with practiced efficiency, beginning to round up anyone too slow to reach the tunnels. 15 minutes passed. Then 17, then 19. At exactly 20 minutes, the sky changed. Space above Kepler 442b tore open. Not gradually, not with warning, but instantly. Where there had been stars and Krathon ships, suddenly there was something else. A rift in reality itself, edges burning with colors that shouldn't exist, and through that impossible wound in space came ships. But calling them ships was like calling a star a candle. They were massive, each one dwarfing the Krathon warships. They didn't look built so much as grown. Their hulls seamless and organic, covered in patterns that hurt to look at directly. They moved through space wrong, not accelerating but simply existing in one place, then another, then another. Zara watched through the observatory as one of the human vessels appeared directly beside a Krathon warship. The Krathon fired immediately. Energy beams that could punch through mountain ranges. The beams hit the human ship and simply stopped, absorbed into the hull like water into sand. Then the human ship responded. It didn't fire weapons in any conventional sense. Instead, space around the Krathon vessel began to fold. The warship tried to escape, engines burning bright, but it was like trying to outrun geometry itself. The space collapsed, and the Krathon ship collapsed with it, compressed into a sphere no bigger than a shuttle, then smaller, then gone. The commander of the Krathon fleet broadcast on all channels. "Unknown vessels, this is Supreme Admiral Krextor of the Krathon Empire. You are interfering with lawful expansion. Withdraw immediately or face the combined might of our 1,000-world empire." The response came in perfect Krathon language, but Zara could still hear the human underneath it. "Supreme Admiral, this is Captain Marcus Chen of the Earth Defense Force. You're attacking civilians, children. That ends now. You have two choices. Leave immediately and never return, or we'll make you leave. You have 60 seconds to decide." The Krathon response was predictable. All 30 warships opened fire simultaneously, creating a crossfire that should have vaporized anything caught in it. The human ships didn't move. They didn't need to. The energy beams bent around them, twisted back on themselves, formed loops and spirals that defied physics. Then the human fleet moved. It wasn't a battle. Battles implied both sides had a chance. The reckoning Captain Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of the EDF Resolute, watching the tactical display as his fleet methodically dismantled the Krathon attack force. His crew worked with practiced efficiency, but he could see the tension in their shoulders. It had been 50 years since humanity had revealed themselves to hostile forces. 50 years of staying hidden, of letting the galaxy think the quarantine zone was empty except for ancient warnings. Captain, his tactical officer, Lieutenant Sarah Kim, called out. The Krathon ground forces are attempting to use civilians as shields. They're gathering them in the main square. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. The same feeling his ancestors must have felt when they decided that some lines couldn't be crossed. Deploy the extraction teams. Non-lethal force only on the ground. I want every civilian safe. The extraction teams weren't what most species would expect from a military force. They descended from the ships not in drop pods or shuttles, but through controlled gravitational fields that let them fall like rain. Each soldier wore power armor that bent light around it, making them shimmer like heat mirages. They landed among the Krathon forces in absolute silence. Zara watched from the colony's emergency bunker as the humans materialized among the Krathon soldiers. The insectoid warriors who moments before had been herding terrified civilians suddenly found themselves facing something from their worst nightmares. The humans moved wrong, too fast for their size, too coordinated for individual soldiers. They flowed through the Krathon formation like water through cracks. One Krathon soldier raised his weapon toward a group of Vorthan children. Before he could fire, a human appeared beside him. Not ran to him, not jumped to him, just appeared. The human's armored hand closed around the weapon and it crumbled like paper. The Krathon tried to strike with his other arms, but the human moved with impossible grace, deflecting each blow before touching something on the Krathon's chest. The insectoid warrior collapsed, paralyzed but alive. In space, the battle had become a rout. Krathon ships tried to flee, but the human vessels were everywhere and nowhere. They didn't pursue so much as they were simply already where the Krathon ships tried to go. One by one, the warships were either compressed into nothing or had their crews teleported to holding areas, their ships powered down and captured intact. Supreme Admiral Krextor made one last desperate move. He activated his flagship's planet cracker, a weapon designed to split worlds in half. The massive energy beam lanced toward Kepler 442b, carrying enough power to turn the planet into an expanding cloud of debris. Captain Chen had been expecting this. All ships, pattern Omega 7, protect the planet. The human fleet moved in perfect synchronization, forming a geometric pattern around the world. The planet cracker beam hit their combined shields and stopped. Not weakened, not deflected, just stopped. The energy hung there in space for a moment, a frozen column of destruction, before the human ships did something that shouldn't have been possible. They reversed it. The beam flowed backward, returning to its source with all its original power plus the gravitational potential energy it had gained. Supreme Admiral Krextor had just enough time to realize what was happening before his own weapon tore his flagship apart from the inside. On the ground, the last Krathon soldiers had been subdued. The humans moved among the civilians, checking for injuries, providing medical care with technology that seemed more magic than science. One human soldier approached Zara, removing their helmet to reveal a surprisingly young face with kind eyes. "Are you Zara Velnash?" the soldier asked. "The one who sent the signal?" Zara nodded, still unable to fully process what had happened. "Thank you," the soldier said. "That old emergency channel has been monitored for 300 years, hoping someone would need us. You saved a lot of lives today by being brave enough to call." Director Hask floated forward in his water sphere. "But the Krathon Empire has 1,000 worlds. They'll come back with everything they have." Captain Chen's voice came through the communication system. "No, they won't. We're transmitting this entire battle to every Krathon world, every slave planet, every species they've conquered. They're going to see what happens when you attack the innocent, and we're going to give them a choice." The transmission went out across the galaxy, showing the complete destruction of the Krathon fleet, the careful protection of civilians, the surgical precision of humans who could have destroyed everything, but chose to save lives instead. And then came the message that would change galactic history. "This is Captain Marcus Chen of Earth. For 300 years, we have stayed in isolation, not because we feared the galaxy, but because we feared what we might do to it. We fought a war against something from outside normal space, and to win, we had to become something more than human. We've stayed hidden because we didn't want to become conquerors. But today we received a call for help. A colony of families of children attacked by an empire built on slavery and fear. So here is our message to the Krathon Empire and any other power that preys on the weak. We're done hiding. Every slave world, every conquered colony, every oppressed species now has our protection. You can free them yourselves or we'll free them for you. You have one standard month to begin dismantling your slave systems. And to those suffering under oppression, know this. The old channels are monitored. The forbidden frequencies are heard. If you call for help, we will answer. Earth stands with you." The message ended, and across 1,000 worlds, the Krathon Empire began to fracture. Slave rebellions erupted on hundreds of planets as species realized their oppressors were not invincible. Krathon governors abandoned their posts, fleeing back to their home worlds. And on every communication channel encrypted and hidden, the same message began to spread. The humans are back. The Deathworlders heard the call. On Kepler 442b, the colony began to rebuild. The humans helped, sharing technology and knowledge but never forcing it on anyone. They were protectors, not conquerors. They repaired the damage, established a defense network that would prevent future attacks, and prepared to leave. Zara found Captain Chen standing in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. "Will you stay?" she asked. "No," Chen replied. "We're not here to rule or control. We're here to make sure no one else does either. But we'll be watching. The channels will be monitored, and if someone calls for help, we'll answer." "Why?" Zara asked. "Why risk yourselves for strangers?" Chen smiled, and for a moment Zara could see the weight of centuries in his eyes. "Because once we were the ones calling for help against something beyond our understanding. We survived by becoming something more than we were. Now we use that power to make sure no one else has to face extinction alone. It's not about being heroes. It's about remembering what it's like to be afraid and choosing to be the help we once needed." The human fleet departed the next day, vanishing through the same tiers in space they had arrived through. But their impact rippled across the galaxy. Within a month, the Krathon Empire had released half its slave worlds. Within 6 months it had collapsed entirely, its subject species declaring independence one after another. Other aggressive empires took note. The hegemony of sorrow pulled back from planned invasions. The Devourers stopped their expansion. Everyone understood the new reality. Humanity was watching. The Deathworlders were back, and they protected those who couldn't protect themselves. Zara returned to her work in the communication center, but now she had a new purpose. She maintained the old emergency channels, made sure they were always operational, because somewhere in the galaxy, someone else might need help. And when they called, she wanted to make sure the Deathworlders would hear them. The galaxy had changed. Not through conquest or war, but through a simple truth. The strong didn't have to prey on the weak. They could choose to protect them instead. And humanity, the Deathworlders from a quarantined system, had made their choice. They would answer every call,